I'm getting lumped up with RockerMike and Rob Rossi. I'm getting lumped up with RockerMike and Rob Rossi. Well, I'm lumped up, but I'm okay. It's gonna get lumped up anyway. You better call back the posse. Just getting lumped up with RockerMike and Rob Rossi. Getting lumped up with RockerMike and Rob Rossi.
Hello, people. Welcome to a very special RockerMike and Rob present, and this is a little different present. This is a present that we're talking about the brand new series based on the Sex Pistol. And Mike, where did they get the information from? How did they get the information to do this series?
Well, the series is called Pistol, and it's on Hulu, and it's based on Steve Jones, the guitarist from the Sex Pistols book called Lonely Boy that he wrote about 6 years ago.
I thought that was pretty good. Yeah, because all right. So this is the thing. Was he getting molested by his dad?
Yeah, I read this book when it came out, and it wasn't his dad. It was like his stepdad. I think it was his stepdad. That's not clear in the series, and I kind of forget from the book, but I think it's his stepdad. Yeah. He was getting molested, mistreated, abused. Yeah. And that had a lot and that was a lot to admit at the time, too. He had never admitted that before in public. I think that kind of, it's just a direct line to how he grew up. Okay. What I liked, I did like this series. I kind of went into it with an open mind. I knew the possibility of it sucking awfully. John Lydon, Johnny Rotten, was very against the making of this. He took them to court. He did this and that. And I tend to like John Lydon, and I kind of was going into it like, well, let me just see what it's all about. It's a very hard story to tell about this band, Rob, because there's so many angles to this, and everybody has a different opinion. John Lydon himself has written, I believe, 2 or 3 books already about his life and in the Pistols. And I Steve Jones wrote 1. Glenn Matlock wrote 1. I'm not sure if Paul Cook did. I don't think so. But and it's been well documented. But what I liked about it is it talked about some other stuff around the scene circling the Sex Pistols and in their relationships that doesn't really get discussed. For instance, the fact that Chrissie Hynde from the Pretenders, who would become in the Pretenders, was in the series, I thought was very cool because she really was an integral part to that scene and the early Sex Pistols. I mean, she worked in that Vivienne Westwood shop, Sex, where they were selling everything. And again, I really should give everybody a little spoiler alert because we're going to be talking about this. So hopefully if you're watching it, you've seen it already. The fact that they had her as an integral part, I thought was impressive.
Yeah, she was almost like Johansson's love interest in a way.
Johansson? What do you mean?
I mean, he was
Steve Jones. Steve Jones.
Steve
Yeah.
Jones is love interest.
Well, I don't know if Chrissy was involved in the making of this. I didn't hear that she was, but she wrote a book herself about her life a few years back that was very good. And, she talked about her time around the punk scene. Okay. So all that's very plausible. How do we know exactly what's true, what's not? The thing with these shows is people to this day love the Pistols. I do. Okay. And I think the Pistols represent different things to different people. So when you start getting into depicting things and saying what happened, and, again, every episode started with this is a dramatization of actual events. So, you're kind of like, all right, they're going to take some liberties here. And I understand John Lydon not liking that. But Danny Boyle, who directed it, did a good job. He's Train Spotting. He's known for that. That's one of the best films of the 90s, as far as I'm concerned.
Mike, the guy that played Johnny Rodden was almost spot on.
Yeah, and his name was shit. What was it? Look him up for me. I forgot to write it down.
Arson Boone?
Okay, Boom. Yeah. The other cast members is Toby Wallace is Steve Jones, Thomas Brody is Malcolm McLaren, Christian Lees is Glenn Matlock. Yeah. Jacob Statler is Paul Cook. Sidney Chandler was Chrissy Hind, and Emma Appleton was Nancy Spungen. And there were, other people. Wally Nightingale was depicted, and they kind of dug deeper than usual in this kind of thing. And there were some characters that normally don't get a mention that did, and I thought that was good.
I like the way that they would start with this weird thing, but they would start with this little opening, and then they would go into the series, but they would all come into play by the time it was done, which was good.
Yeah.
Like when they went to in that episode when they went to the psych ward, how crazy was that black woman? Yeah,
that was the episode called Bodies, episode 3.
Was that a real thing?
Yes, that happened. But John Lydon has admitted that was based on Pauline. Okay, that was her name. Okay, and wow. she had an abortion and carried it around. I mean, that's sick. But
when the lady in the store, they think she was stealing something, she opened the bag and she
that was Vivienne Westwood depicted in that series, the lady who owned the store. Vivienne Westwood, if you don't know, she was a major fashion designer and designed all the stuff that was worn in the punk scene in England in the 70s, and then went on to be more mainstream later on. Interestingly, I don't know if you picked up on this. There was a lot of politics, thrown in, all right? And to understand the punk scene in England in the 70s, you have to realize this was a country that was hyperinflation. There was high unemployment. There was garbage strikes everywhere. There was, and the New York scene had very similar stuff going on too. Yeah. Okay. But it was less political.
So let's talk about episode 1, the cloak of invisibility.
The cloak of invisibility. Yeah. I mean, fucking Steve Jones stealing Bowie's equipment. That's classic. I knew that story.
Lipstick on the mic.
Yeah, he said there's still lipstick on the mic. Yep. And they were putting this like early version of the band together, and it was before Malcolm was even involved.
Yeah.
And they were called the Swankers. The Swankers. Okay. And the one Steve song that he had from the beginning was what would be called 17 on Nevermind the Bollocks. It was called I'm a Lazy Sod. Yeah. Okay. And that was something that he had written, early on. He was a lazy sod. He was like a cat burglar. Okay. He would just go into people's, steal shit and climb down the fire escape,
It was amazing how he would just like all the stuff that the one time he got caught, they lumped him up. Holy shit.
Well, that was funny. Do you remember the show, the band that he was trying to steal from?
Oh, what was it? Motorhead?
Well, Hawkwind. When Lemmy was with, it was
Yeah.
Hawkwind. Okay, so the Hawkwind security tuned him up.
Oh man, they threw him up. But
And
let's
then-
talk about like his house. The show starts with another thing that I was shocked to learn about. I never knew that he couldn't read.
Yeah, he talked about that in the book. Yeah, he admitted that he didn't learn how to read till much later. He never went to school. Look, I mean, this even in the 70s in England, you had that. You had that.
So he steals this equipment, and then it started a whole adventure of him. He go into that sex store, whatever, right?
Yeah, he goes in there to steal some shit to wear in the band, and he gets caught doing that, and that's how they meet. He meets Malcolm and Vivian, and Malcolm, once he gets involved with the band a little bit, they don't really have a name yet. They got some different names. He gets arrested for stealing the Hawkwind stuff, goes to jail, and Malcolm gets him out. And that's a very important scene because it sets the tone for how the band, the Pistols, would work later on, not much later on, okay? He had this loyalty to Malcolm because of that. And Malcolm was just, this guy just took them for everything he could. Okay, and Steve just couldn't see it right away.
Yeah.
And it kind of created like two camps in the band after a while, especially once Sid came in the band.
Yeah,
that's a total shit show right there when that happened. It's.
But the way they made it sound, so the show ends with this wacky guy look in the mirror with a shirt saying something war, whatever, and it cuts off with boom, they reveal Johnny Rotten.
Yeah, the second episode is called Rotten, and that's when Johnny Rotten is brought into the scene. His name is John Lydon. They call him Rotten because of his teeth.
Yeah.
Okay, and which were very rotten. And what that episode was cool because it starts out with showing Jordan, okay, on the train.
Yeah,
and
with almost naked.
She was wearing see-through Vivian Westwood clothes. She's on the train, and everyone's freaking out, and the little kids are looking at her and shit, and you can see her boobs through the shirt. I mean, her name was Pamela Rook. And she just passed away only a few weeks ago. She had cancer, I believe. Yeah, they dedicated the show to her too, which I thought was nice.
Yeah, that was very good. I just thought that. So here they start with Robin, but they also, I think he picked the wrong guy. I think it was Sid Vicious that was supposed to be there before Robin, right? That was.
I don't know how accurate that is. I mean, it could be true. There was a group called like the Johns. They were like a little gang, and one was John Lydon, one was Sid, whose real name was John Simon Ritchie, and one other guy or something like that was a John, and it's possible they could have got confused, but Lydon was obviously the right choice.
Yeah, he was. So he got in there, and they start Jones and Rodden did not get along in the beginning. Like they just kept fighting.
Well, how could you? I mean, Rotten was off the hook obnoxious, okay, and but I think that's kind of probably overblown because I think that John Lydon was probably a little more quiet than they depict him. Often they depict him as this wide-eyed maniac. Okay, and I don't think that that's entirely accurate. I think that he was also a very integral part of the group once he got his confidence. Okay, because if you remember, they were starting out doing a lot of covers. They didn't really have any originals. They had the one "I'm a Lazy Sod," which I don't know if they did that often. I mean, they would do covers of The Who and like Substitute. They would cover the Small Faces. They would cover the Modern Lovers with Roadrunner, all cool shit. Okay, but they really needed to write some stuff. And there's one point where I think Steve Jones is yelling, we're a fucking cover band. We got to do, and he was right. Okay. Finally, I think once Lydon got his confidence, and that was with the song Anarchy in the UK, and then Bodies, which, I think Bodies is probably their best song. Okay. If I had to pick one, just in the way it's written and the subject matter, and it's actually such a standout on Nevermind the Bollocks. Not that they're all not good; they're all great. That's an album where every song is great, but Bodies always stood out to me because it's just so twisted and demented, and it's actually based on a true thing.
And Mike, speaking of Bodies, where do you get those wonderful teeth done? You get your teeth look shining. They're gorgeous. They look great. Who's the guy that helps you out to bring these fine teeth?
Speaking about rotten teeth that need to be fixed, you need to go to Park Dental Care in Queens. Okay, Park Dental Care in Richmond Hill, Queens.
Johnny Rotten needed that dentist really bad.
Oh, his teeth are fixed now, but back then, yeah.
Oh man. So let's talk. Since we're talking about bodies and dentists and all kind of stuff, let's talk about episode 3, the whole body. This was a very strange episode.
Yeah, it starts out with this woman in a mental hospital, a young black woman being abused by an orderly and being chased up a tree. And, this is how they got the idea, how Johnny got the idea for the lyrics to Bodies. It's a true story. And, wow. It's sick, but I mean, I like how I don't think it's accurate, but I like how they tied it into the spitting. All right. Now, you don't know what I'm talking about. Gobbing, as the Brits say, gobbing on somebody is what a lot of the punk bands experienced by their audience. The audience would spit on them. Okay. And I liked how Danny Boyle put that. I mean, I don't think it's accurate. That's not probably how that got started. I think it just got started by the audience doing it. Okay. But Pauline used to get spit on by that orderly that raped her. Okay. And once she was out of the hospital, she aborted the baby, was walking around with the dead baby, and then goes back and sees him. Now, didn't it look like not only did she spit in his face after he got off the bus, didn't she have something in her hand?
She had
scissors or something? Scissors? Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know how true that is. I don't know. Okay, I have to find out. But made for good TV. Fuck it.
Yeah, because it starts with she's in the mental out. Then you see her going to the show. She pays the money. And she instantly fell in love with Johnny Rotten. She saw him there on stage.
I think she recognized something in that scene that was for her.
Yeah, and then you see Steve Jones as the dog trying to bang her. And
it is in the book, and it really came across in the show too, is just how much of a dog he was.
He was a dog.
This guy would bang anything and everything. Okay.
Yeah.
And all the girls knew it too. It's just like he was just a dirty dog.
But then it's funny because him and Christy Hines are having this kind of relationship. They're supposed to get married, and he couldn't keep in his pants.
Right. They're supposed to get married for the visa. She needed to get a visa to stay in the country all the time. And I liked how they depicted Nick Kent. All right. Yeah. Nick Kent is this interesting character from the 70s English scene that he was a journalist. I believe he wrote for New Musical Express and other things. And, he's written a couple of books over the years. And I just thought it was hilarious how they were like, oh, yeah, Nick Kent, he just wants to be Keith Richards,
Oh, yeah.
And he did look just like, he dressed just like Richards in the 70s,
That was pretty funny because
he was going with her. He was going with Chrissy, and she was messing around with Steve Jones and whatever.
and whatever. Let's go to episode 4. What was episode 4?
Hang on a second. Go back to 3 for a minute, because in that one, you start to kind of, there's 2 things I want to talk about. You start to kind of see the problems with Glenn Matlock in the band.
Oh yeah.
All right. And Glenn, who was involved in plenty of the songwriting, we interviewed him like 2 years ago, and he was one of our best interviews to this day. And great guy. But, you know, they started
they mentioned the Badfingers here too a few times.
Yeah, I mean, they mentioned Badfinger because the studio that they started to use on Denmark Street was actually the place. It wasn't a studio; it was like a garage. Okay, where Pete Ham from Badfinger killed himself. I didn't know that. I didn't recall that. They say that, and I guess it's true. Why? How could you say it if it's not true? But he supposedly got it, you know, for a cheap price. Malcolm, I'm talking about, got it for a cheap price. But what you start to see in this episode, and it becomes apparent later on, is that Malcolm really played these guys against each other to create chaos and make them more controversial.
Yeah.
But in the end, purposely destroyed, and then would purposely destroy the band, basically.
Yeah.
You know, by the last episode, they're like at each other's throats. Okay. I mean, I don't want to jump ahead too much. I know we'll get to it, but what the fuck was he thinking putting them on tour in the South? I've been into the Sex Pistols for more than 40 years. Okay. And I've known that story, and for the life of me, I have never understood that other than to destroy the band.
Yeah.
Because everywhere they went, they were getting their asses kicked. I mean, you in the 1970s, and you look like that, and you're from England, and you go play Atlanta, fucking cowboy country back then? No way. All right? And, you know, anyway.
But he did it on purpose. He said he could have got the better venues, and he did it on purpose, actually.
Yeah. Like, why didn't they play New York that time? They should have. They ended up in San Francisco. They could have played New York, too. They were supposed to, but it's like it didn't happen.
All right. So let's get, what's episode 4?
Yeah. What'd you think? Back to 3 for 1 second. What did you think of the scene when Rotten is talking to Vivian Westwood about the use of the swastika?
Oh yeah, she made it seem like it's nonchalant. She said they use it as a bad thing, but she was going to use it as a good thing. I thought it was pretty fucking weird.
And that was accurate, because the idea was to kind of turn it around into something that's not a hate symbol or like that. I will say this. The political aspects of that scene is interesting, and I can understand how it played out the way it did. But, and it's depicted in the show, what I'm going to say, there's a hypocrisy to all that, okay? Because when they finally did have the chaos and and more people were getting into what they were doing,
oh, it was too much.
Okay, they couldn't fucking handle it because it was like Malcolm gets angry at them after the Bill Grundy show. Okay, which is in episode 4. Okay, when they go on the Bill Grundy show and
pretty very cunty,
pretty vacant.
Vacant.
Okay, because that's how Johnny always says vacant. He says vacant.
Vacant. All right, so pretty vacant. And yeah, you're right. He went on that talk show. Holy moly, man! What a shit show.
And what was cool too is they showed the Bromley contingent, which was like Susie Sue and a bunch of other people.
Yeah.
Sue Catwoman was depicted. I wish Susie had some lines. She really didn't have any lines. She was just sitting there looking good. Okay. Yeah. But and I thought that woman who played her, whoever that was, looked a lot like her.
Wow.
She was beautiful. Yeah. episode 4 is good because of you get to see Don Letts, the reggae Rastafari depicted reggae guy who was very integral to the scene. He was the guy who filmed the punk rock movie on 8mm, and Chrissie Hynde is actually not credited, but was actually in charge of the camera work in that movie.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So it's cool that they showed that. And again, reggae and Jamaican music was very important to that scene.
Yeah.
They hung out in reggae clubs, these punk guys and girls. Reggae music was part of like their life. Okay. And that's kind of something that, didn't carry over to the American scene too much. And it's not often talked about when you're describing the British scene, but it definitely existed. Don Letts was a big part of that. And he's kind of like, he's you see him, he's in the background. He's not, no speaking part. It would have been cool if he would have had a speaking part.
Yeah,
but he's in it.
In there, I remember seeing, what's the other thing? The way this episode ends also, you see like the back of a blonde just walking through the crowd. And
that's
where Nancy comes in.
Yeah, right, because Nancy is in the next episode. Yeah, you see her walking in.
Because I just like the way they do that, the way they introduce that, they just go, and then they go to the next show.
One thing that they did not cover at all, though they did mention some of the characters involved, is they did not cover anything about the Anarchy in the UK tour. That's one thing I didn't like about the series. They should have gone into that, how like Johnny Thunders and the Clash, Johnny Thunders and the Heartbreakers and the Clash were on that tour with the Damned. Okay, and they had all these shows booked. I think they only did a couple because they would all get canceled because of the controversy.
Yeah.
But that Anarchy in the UK tour was what really brought heroin into that scene. Okay, and Nancy too, who came around that same time.
Yeah, because remember Nancy started talking about the Heartbreaker and Richard Hell.
Yeah. So. It's mentioned, but they don't talk about the tour. The tour was a big deal. Yeah, that was a big deal at the time.
But Nancy looked like a simpleton, like a real annoying idiot that you wouldn't want to hang out with. Like a junkie.
That's 1,000% accurate.
And then I like what Christine is telling him. She's a groupie. She does anything. Blah blah blah.
Yeah. You're talking about. I think it's part 5. The Nancy and Sid.
Can we get into that part 5?
Episode 4 too is when Glenn gets edged out.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and Steve just tells him in a bathroom. Okay, and again this was. I always felt it was a mistake, kicking Matlock out of the band.
Yeah.
All right. And then they tried to blame it on he likes the Beatles. Okay, I mean, I know it got to be ridiculous. I mean, he was like their best musician, really, in the band.
He was the only musician.
That could be called one. Yeah. Okay. And, was involved in a lot of the songwriting. Okay. And then, I'm going to be critical here, too. Again, I did like the whole series, but there were parts of it that I thought could have been better. When they talk about making the album, which is in episode 5, the one called Nancy and Sid, they don't show Glenn. And Glenn, we know, because he discussed it with us and he discussed it in his book called I Was a Teenage Sex Pistol, okay, that he was involved with some of the recording, okay, because Sid couldn't play. Sid could not play bass.
No.
Okay, barely. Very, very, next to nothing. He was half whacked too much on drugs or wasted on drinking, whatever. And then actually he had hepatitis during the recording of this album too. So he was in the hospital. So Steve Jones did some of the bass work, but Glenn Matlock was brought in, okay, to record a little bit on that album.
Yeah.
Not maybe 1 or 2 songs, okay? But it's not mentioned anymore. He's kind of just X'd out. Now, Glenn was involved with the making of this series, so I'd love to ask him, why did you not push that? Because I think it was an important thing. Maybe I'm wrong. I think it's an important thing. you know. But once Nancy got into the mix, that was just, I mean, you can only go down from there, man.
Yeah, and this guy banged Nancy too.
Yeah, yeah. He banged everything, man. Okay. You know, and she she came on to him. Now, one thing that's wrong too that they changed is I think the story goes that when she first saw the Sex Pistols, she had her eyes on Johnny Rotten, and he wanted nothing to do with her at all. At all. Rotten is. I mean, I'm sure he probably had his fair share of women, but I don't think he was one of these guys that wanted to bang anything. Okay, and then I think she went after Jones, and then ended up with Sid. So I think that I think I've heard that that's the order of it. So they changed that a little bit. But then again, there's so many different stories with this, and everybody has a different angle in their books. And you've heard rumors, so I'm not sure. But I think she was just trying to fuck Steve to get a heroin connection.
Yeah.
Right? Because she gets it. She's at the band meeting. Sid's in the hospital. She goes over and she gets in his face and she acts very seductively. You know, oh, I need a heroin connection. I know you're a man about town. You must know, you know. And he's like, yeah, but not for you, so you can give it all to fucking him. You know, which...
She did it with him, and he snorted. She shot it. Because they show a scene like he's doing heroin.
Steve, the sad thing is about Steve is he was anti-heroin until I think the point when the band was starting to fall apart and Sid was way strung out, not too long before he would leave the band would implode. He started to do it, Steve.
Yeah.
And he was snorting it. Now, I know Steve had a bad heroin habit. He talked about it in his book, but I've heard stories. I know people that after the Pistols were done, Jones was seen down on the Lower East Side copping dope from, remember the buildings that would sell them, you know, dropping a bucket down and all that? Remember that back in the day? You know, and he was one of these, like, you know, he was living in New York, going to CBGBs and getting high on the Lower East Side.
You know what's interesting of that episode where they when Johnny Rotten go, we need to get rid of her. They put a bag in.
Yeah, I mean it's and Chrissy Hine couldn't stand her, but then kind of like lets her stay there and you know, then realizes after a bag of dope that that's all she really wanted anyway.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
the kid in the bathroom taking a
shit. You know, oh, that was disgusting. And you see her, she's like, ah.
Yeah, so they put so this episode had a lot, because this is the episode where they sent her back, then they're playing on the boat.
Yeah, they're on the boat, and then she and I've seen that depicted in other ways. I'm not sure how accurate that is. I don't know if she actually got on the plane and went back to America and then somehow came back after a short time, or did she never get on the plane? I don't know. Okay, it really doesn't matter. But I've seen like in the movie Sid and Nancy, which is really total bullshit. Okay, they show that's what Gary Oldman and Chloe Webb is Nancy. Gary Oldman is Sid. They depict them on the boat together, that they were still together. And I'm trying to remember from there's the I Don't Want to Live This Life book written by Nancy's mother that goes into some of that and some of the other Sex Pistol books. I can't recall how accurate that is. I don't. Doesn't really matter, I guess.
So they got her high on dope and they put her on a plane back to America.
Yeah.
And then
she ends up coming back.
Yeah.
And rekindles the relationship with Sid.
Yeah.
What I liked about this episode is that they showed John Lydon's mother, okay? And if you read John's books, especially his both of them talk about it. Anger is an energy, and no dogs or Irish need apply. No Irish or dogs need apply. That's the name of the first one.
Yeah.
He always talks very highly of his mother because his mother was from Ireland. His father was from England. And very blue-collar upbringing. And she liked his mom. Okay, and would enjoy stuff that he listened to, Alice Cooper, David Bowie, and she was very supportive of him. He lived with his mom.
Yeah, because they had that weird thing that he wanted the name of God Save the Queen and
No Future.
Nah, God Save the Queen sounds good.
That's the scene I'm talking about. I like that part because also there's the scene when him and Jones kind of bond for a minute, and he's like, "You want to meet my mother?" You know, like that was like to John. Yeah. That was a sign of like you're a good guy. I'm going to introduce you to my mother.
Yeah.
You know, and then they're playing the music, the single for "God Save the Queen." It was before the album was even out, and she likes it, and she says, "No, keep it as God Save the Queen," because he wanted it to be called "No Future."
Yeah, No Future. But I think that God Save the Queen was the right one. You know what's so funny? The Jubilee is happening at that time too. It's the 25th Jubilee. Think about now. We're doing the 70. Think about how crazy it is.
I know. And let me tell you, we're coming up to the 50th anniversary of punk rock in 4 years. Technically, it's before that, but as far as like 76 kind of being that year, you know, in 2026, they'll be saying 50 years. You know, it's hard to believe it's been that long.
All right, so let's talk about track 5, Sid and Nancy. What do you think of this episode?
I liked it. I mean, they show how they're getting signed by, they get dropped by EMI, A&M picks them up. One thing I noticed with this was, you know, Sid is in the band now. And Sid doesn't give two fucks about wanting to learn how to play. He says it's all about image.
Yeah.
And
you play that. They're only going to be looking at me and Johnny.
And that's the aspect of the British scene that I can't stand. Okay. And I'm a fan of a lot of the music. I think that the image and the clothes and everything kind of overshadows what these guys were doing musically.
Yeah.
You know, maybe that's you can't unpack that. Maybe you can't kind of divide it. It has to be together. Punk and the music. I don't know. I always felt that I was more partial to the New York scene, not just because I'm from New York, but because it was more like organic and a little less manufactured. Because take it the way you take it any way you want. I love the music of the Sex Pistols, but they were kind of like, you know, they were kind of like the Monkees. Okay, you know, Malcolm, and I like the Monkees, so I'm not putting that down.
He actually learned. All the Monkees learned how to play the instruments for real.
That's true, and they were very good musicians and songwriters. So in that sense, it's a little different. But the manufacturedness of the Pistols, with Malcolm pulling the strings, eventually it would. I think he knew that he couldn't control them anymore, and just decided to destroy what he created.
But that's what we talk about. That's where they do that crazy tour in the South. They will arrive at Atlanta. What do you think of that scene? They put a $300,000 bounty so they don't run or leave or anything. And they had the security. How about that security guy?
Yeah. They put these like it's in Atlanta, and they put these two big cowboy fuckers, okay, in charge of the tour, okay, and to kind of monitor them. And especially Sid. The idea was that Sid was just begging, saying he couldn't find any way to cop dope. Okay. And he was dying for that. And I mean, he even carved, you know, this was when he was really crazy. He carved with a knife, a razor blade. You know, I need a fix.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that's just beyond, man. He was a sick individual.
Yeah, he was. It was crazy. It was crazy. I thought that episode was very good too. I love that how they were traveling on the bus, going to all this town, and I think they were also getting on each other's nerves because they were all together too much.
Any band will tell you you're on a tour bus for a month with each other, smelling each other's farts and shit. You're gonna want to kill each other.
Yeah,
and that's in a normal band. Okay, not a band like this that these guys were all out of their minds in different ways. I think they like the idea of playing America.
Yeah.
That's every British band wants to play America. Okay, but to have them go down to the South and then give them what turned out to be the final gig in San Francisco, which was definitely a great gig to get at the Winterland.
Yeah.
Okay. That was a spot that everybody played back then. It was too little, too late. They were done by that point.
Dude, how funny was it? Like in episode 1, where they did, I think, episode 1 or episode 2, where they go to the precinct, they play in the prison, and the inmates are like go into it.
The prison, yeah, right.
And the kiss party was good too.
It looked like they were going to kill them at first, and then they started to like them.
Yeah, it was great. That was a great scene.
Yeah.
So this they talk a little bit about they went through Sid. I thought they really went right through the Sid and Nancy thing. They just went right through it.
They really glossed over it, and I got mixed feelings about that. I'm tired of the Sid and Nancy thing, okay, because the Sex Pistols was so much more than that. And growing up, loving this band
the right way. They just put a little. They talked about it. It wasn't like the whole thing. Based
I guess overall, it's good they didn't get into they didn't even show the murder. They just showed the after when he wakes up and she's dead. And there's the whole thing on did he do it? Did he not do it? It just, it didn't. They didn't discuss it. They glossed right over it. And then next thing you know, he's dead.
Dude, how about this scene where Malcolm making a phone call? They're criminals.
He was right. He was setting them up. Yeah, he was trying to just stir the pot. It was too much, man. He was. And I did like the part in episode 6, the last episode, Who Killed Bambi, where they talk about the great rock and roll swindle movie, and how Ronnie Biggs, the great train robber, okay, was going to be in it, okay, and Lydon wants no part of this movie because Ronnie Biggs actually, smashed somebody's fucking brains in, left them brain dead, and he says this was like a blue collar guy that was working and he killed him. Why do we have to have him on? See, that gets into I think what Lydon was really like.
Wow.
And probably didn't get shown enough in this series, but did occasionally pop up. Okay. I think he was very blue collar, common man. I know he was. I've read his books and I've admired the guy. I think that's what he is, So
the show starts with them. They show you about them. Then they showed Sid waking up and Nancy's dead.
Yeah.
And he gets arrested and everybody's starting to talk about it. And then they just stop. Once they stop showing talk about it, the next thing they go into Chrissy Hynde doing her first show with the Pretenders.
Well, it's not a show. I think she's recording because Steve Jones goes to the studio and hears her playing. Was it Kid maybe or something? Okay, there's a scene. There's a scene where she's learning a new episode. At the end of episode 5, shows her playing an early acoustic version of Kid. Yeah. And she's saying she has to have her own voice. I thought that was a nice throw in.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to go back to what I said in the beginning is I think this is a very hard thing to make a show on or even a movie because so many people have different opinions. It's about a scene and music people feel very strongly about it because being into punk rock, especially in the 70s, even in the 80s, was a dangerous thing to do. All right.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get in fights because of that. Okay. And people hated you because of that. Oh, you got fucking funny hair or funny clothes, or, whatever. Okay.
With those guys to the
It's not like today where, they'd lock a school down if somebody bullies somebody. Okay. Back then, if you looked like that and you were in school like me, okay, the jocks would fuck with you. Okay. And basically would stuff you in a locker if they can get away with it, or kick your ass after school. All right. And I had all that done to me. I got in a few punches too. Okay. Yeah. But different times. Okay. But people from that scene, because I've seen some responses already on social media saying it's awful and it depicted things wrongly and the actors were terrible. I didn't think that. And I'd like to know, like, who do you want to play Johnny Rotten? Who could do that out there? You got to get an unknown. Okay.
I thought it was good. I thought it was very good. I thought it was very good. Remember when they're in the South and the guy goes, "This is not like back home. People have guns here."
Yeah. He goes, right. That's true. He goes, people have guns, and he's like, "Well, we get stabbed every day. It's not the same thing."
Not the same thing.
No, not the same thing. So and in that last episode, you really see how Malcolm was pinning them against each other.
Oh yeah,
he was pushing Rotten out of the band and saying that Sid will sing. Okay, he was telling Rotten, "Oh, you're just like you become Rod Stewart. You're just a rock star now," and he was acting like a dick. Now I don't know how true that is. That's another thing. Like I don't know. Did he get full of himself? He was a young guy. It's possible it got to his head. Okay.
Yeah, might have.
So I don't know. And again, it goes back to what I was saying. It's very hard to please everybody with something like this. But overall, I thought it was pretty well done. Some mistakes, but I can live with it. And it depicted things that normally doesn't get depicted. The reggae elements, Chrissy Hine being involved, Don Letts being depicted, Susie being depicted, talking about Johnny's mom. I mean, that never got mentioned in anything before.
Chrissy Hine was good because I thought she was going on stage because she got the thing and she told the guy, "I'll see you on stage," and the guy told her that Sid is dead. Yeah,
and she was shocked. Yeah.
But she wasn't done. But then at the end, they show this guy, Steve Jones, getting like heroin, and I think he hallucinates this whole thing.
Well, he was in a bad place after the band broke up. Yeah. It would be he did the great rock and roll swindle in the ashes of the band breaking up.
Yeah.
But after that, he kind of dropped off the scene for a couple of years, came back with the Professionals with Paul Cook. They had some good music. And then in the 80s, he would kind of have a solo album or two. He played with Iggy a little bit, got his life together. Now he's got Jonesy's Jukebox, the podcast. Very good show. Yeah.
That's pretty good. Pretty good. So I gotta say, after watching this series, out of 5 out of 10, I'll give it like a 3.5.
3.5 out of 5, right?
Yep.
I was gonna say the exact same thing, Rob, and I'll tell you why I give it that. I would have gave it just 3, okay, because of some of the mistakes and some of the little bit of cheesiness in it, but the extra half I give just for depicting some stuff that's never been shown before, and giving some credit. Yeah,
I like that they were like. I didn't know that he couldn't read. I didn't know the thing about the bat fingers that the guy died in there.
Yeah,
and there was a lot of stuff they gave that you were like, "Oh shit, I never knew that." So how real it is, I don't know, but it's stuff that you never heard. The same thing with the mother and stuff. It was stuff that was like, "Whoa, this is."
And also, Jonesy was abused, which they show him as a child whacking his. I mean, that's sick. And then he still had a somewhat decent relationship with his mother, but anytime his father was around, he'd shit on him, and he just I think that's got to be for Steve Jones. That's got to be hard to write about in a book and now to see it on TV. I give it to him for putting it out there, you know. And Lydon, you know, Johnny Lydon, I understand him being angry. I think he likes to have control over how he's depicted.
That's what it is.
And I get that. I really do. I'm not against the fact that he was mad about this. I just think maybe it was a little more well done than he made it seem. I don't know, because he said like
it was too close to the real thing, and he's like, "Oh, I don't."
Well, that's true too. I don't know. I like John Lydon. He's a good guy, on top of being the icon that he is.
Yeah.
I mean, he's raised his grandchildren. Ariel was his daughter, and when she passed away years back from cancer, he's raised the two kids, and he also has Nora, who was like 18, 20 years older than him.
Wow. That
now is suffering from Alzheimer's. She's in her 80s, and he's got to take care of her too. And he's been catching a lot of shit for supporting Trump. So I hand it to him. I think he's a good guy, and I understand him being upset. But maybe you should just let it go. Yeah. Maybe, and I do say that with all respect.
Yeah. So Mike would agree 3.5 star for this show. I think if you're curious, watch it. If you watch the first episode, it'll probably get you hooked because it started pretty interesting.
Right.
And there's a lot of reference to other music. You see they showed David Bowie concert footage, and they show footage of
they show the Real Pistols too.
Yeah, they show footage of Real Pistols. They also show footage of the guy that sang "Sitting on the Dock of the Bay." Also.
Otis Redding, yeah.
Otis Redding. So I thought it was pretty good. They gave you a little thing. And, people are not going to be happy with it. But I think if you really like the Sex Pistols, and it's an easy documentary to watch, like a series. It's not a documentary. It's an easy series to watch. They bring in the old thing, and they tell people in the beginning that this is based on such stuff. So they are going to make stuff up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. I mean, you know what you're getting when you watch it. And again, it's a hard story to tell. I thought that they did a decent job with it. 3.5 stars. I'll give it out of 5. Next is the Ramones biopic. That's what I want.
You know what show we should do a review on? It's
what?
The most ridiculous show. Do you see the show, the American Crime?
No.
They did the Bill Clinton impeachment trial?
No.
Oh my God. Mike, go on Hulu and look up impeachment. It's from FX. It's on FX.
Okay.
Watch that, and I think we can do a review show on that, because everybody looks sure that they got the dress, they got a girl playing Monica.
Oh wow,
it's pretty good. It's
right.
called Impeachment.
I'll check it. It's called Impeachment.
Yeah, it's part of the American
Crime.
American Crime Story. It's like it's on FX. It's on FX. Look it up, and you'll be like,
all right.
Whoa.
I'll check it out. All right.
Good.
So where can we find you, Rob, on social media?
You can find me on anything lumped up. You look getting lumped up on Google or on any web service, and it will take you right to my spot with the Twitter account, the Instagram, Facebook, and the YouTube account. And this is on YouTube. We also would like to thank who's our sponsor, Mike? Those great dentists.
Park Dental Care in Richmond Hill, Queens. Check them out. They take all insurances.
We'd like to thank them for sponsoring the show for now. And we got some new sponsor coming in soon. We're working some deals. And we'd like to thank you for watching the show. I hope you enjoyed this review show. And Mike, where can we find you?
I'm all over. You can find me on Facebook under RockerMike. And, of course, the Rock Show Podcast group page on Facebook. Instagram, RockerMike212. Twitter, RockerMike212, Cloud Hub, MeWe, Paula, Getter, Truth Social, all under RockerMike. I'm just dropping bombs everywhere. Look for me mostly under RockerMike. Google me, I'll pop up there.
Yep. All right, guys. Thank you for watching. Remember, don't get drunk.
Get lumped up.
See you later.
Take care.
I'm getting lumped up with RockerMike and Rob Rossi. I'm getting lumped up with RockerMike and Rob Rossi. Well, I'm lumped up, but I'm okay. It's gonna get lumped up anyway. You better call back the posse. Just getting lumped up with RockerMike and Rob